Little Red Inside the Hood by James G. Once upon a time, there lived a young woman named Susie, along with her mother, Marilyn. Together, they lived in a cute little cottage, and their home was located on the south side of a quaint little village called Seriesville. Seriesville was surrounded by an immense and beautiful forest. It was the middle of spring, and all around the woods life was abundant. Birds were singing, white-tailed deers were grazing, and squirrels were chasing each other up, down, and around trees. Birds were buzzing from patch to patch in the wildflowers, and butterflies were floating on the light breeze that was blowing. Being mid-morning, the daily village scene was playing out in full. The butcher was carving meats, the blacksmith was pinging away at her anvil, the bowyer was making longbows, and the barber was pulling a tooth. On the west side of Seriesville, there was a monastery that brewed fresh mead from honey, and on the east side there was a pub and an inn. Though everything seems to be going quite lovely and smoothly in this corner of the forest, everything is not so pleasant for Susie and her mother and their cute little home. "Oh, what a night!" sighs Marilyn, as she rubbed her eyes to adjust to the morning sun. Marilyn was stumbling out of the pub on the east side of town, where she often frequents. She was headed back home to Susie, but beforehand she stopped by the local alchemist, Aloysius, to get herself a vial of milk of the poppy. Milk of the poppy was a bit of a thing for Miss Marilyn. While Marilyn is stumbling home, she leans on the wall to take a bit of a break when she overhears a bit of a conversation. "That little Red Riding Hood sure can be all over the place," a woman's voice exclaims. "She sure can," answers a man who Marilyn believes is Susie's boss, Ernest the butcher. "Just yesterday I almost had to fire her for screaming at me, and then throwing a slab of ribs at the wall," he continues. "And this ain't the first time she's just gone off like that." Both parties just sigh, and Marilyn had heard enough. She heads straight home, and while muttering under her breath, "You see, Little Red Riding Hood is Susie's nickname, and that was what many of the village folks called her. Susie's grandmother had made her this handsome, bright riding shawl with a large hood on it, and it was Susie's favorite piece of attire. She nearly wore it every day, and this led to her nickname." Marilyn bursts in the door and yells, "Susie, get in here now!" "Oh, God, what is it?" cries Susie in a shaking voice as she hurries in from the backyard. "Why must you always embarrass me? What is wrong with you? Why are you this way?" scolds Marilyn. "What? What did I do this time, Mom?" snaps Susie with attitude. "I overheard Ernest telling someone that you threw a rack of ribs and screamed at him. How dare you?" says Mom. "Oh my God, it wasn't even like that. He's just overacting. Oh God, you think he's gonna fire me?" says Susie as she begins to sob into her hands, revealing a few not so old scars on her wrists. "God, Red, why must you be so gosh darn dramatic?" Marilyn says in disgust as she takes a sip from her vial and washes it down with a swig of mead from her favorite horn. "I swear you are so bipolar." And just like that, that comment set Susie into another world. "Oh God, you're gonna leave me, just like Dad. I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna... Ah!" Susie shouts and flips the table. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." Marilyn grabs her and gives her a sip of mead. You need to quit it now, Miss Thing. I'm not going to be dealing with you like this today, she says. Hey, your grandma is sick. Why don't you bring her over a basket full of soup and bread? Also, can you grab her another vial of milk with a poppy, too? Susie perks up a bit, grabs her riding shawl and the basket, and makes her way to town and onward to the north side of the village where her grandmother lives. On the way, she stops by to see Aloysius and get another vial of milk with a poppy. Just saw your mother this morning, Red. Hope all is well, greets Aloysius, but not much else is said for fear of setting Susie off. Thanks, sir, giggles Susie. I'm off to see my grandma and bring her some stuff to make her feel better. Have a good day, Aloysius says as he hands her the medicine. You too, smiles Susie as she skips out of the store and towards the north of town. Susie's grandmother lived quite a way out into the forest, for she liked her solitude and quiet. Susie did not mind the walk, and she was about the only one who ever went out there. She enjoyed the forest creatures scurrying about, the wildflowers, and the smell of pine. However, she also came out here to drink mead and have flings with the local townsmen. She had also attempted to hang herself, but under fortuitous circumstances, a local monk talked her out of it. They talked for a while, and she explained why she felt like she needed to end it all, but was glad he had saved her. The monk had done copious amounts of reading and told her, "If I were a betting man, I would say you may have a disorder I once read about called borderline personality disorder." Susie had always shrugged that off, telling herself there's nothing wrong with me. But deep down she knew she felt hollow, as if she did not really know who she was or where she was going in life. The truth was she was scared. Scared of losing her mom, scared of losing her home, her job, and most of all, she was afraid of losing her grandma, who was always sick. Her thoughts put her into a whirlwind again, and she began to cry. A big bad wolf named John Leroy was out on his afternoon hunt and was feeling abnormally hungry when he heard crying of Susie. Knowing that if he played his card right, he could score himself an easy and substantial meal, so he approached Susie with a calming demeanor and voice and said, "Hey there, Little Red Riding Hood. What's good?" gasped Susie. "Leave me alone, John Leroy." "Oh, I don't worry. I only wish to help you, my dear. Don't you know this forest can be a scary place? Where are you off to this afternoon?" "I'm off to see my grandma. She's sick," Susie explains. "Oh no, would you like me to walk with you and see if there's anything you need around the house?" "No, sir, I think I can manage," she says, not wanting to lead the wolf to her little old grandma's house, and knowing that there is a woodsman that lived close by. John Leroy tips his hat and says, "Suit yourself, Red." He runs back into the forest, so to rush and beat Susie to the cabin. When the wolf arrives at the cabin, he finds Grandma in bed and sleeping. He approaches her bedside and in one huge gulp swallows Susie's grandma whole. He then hears a twig break and knows that it must be Little Red Riding Hood approaching the cabin. He throws on one of Grandma's nightgowns and a cap and crawls into her bed with the blanket up to his chin. "Hello, Grandma. I have come to see you and bring you some goodies to make you feel better. Aren't I great?" "Oh, yes. Oh, oh, yes, my dear, of course. Come closer and show me what you have brought." Susie walks in and sits at the foot of the bed and starts to lay out the contents of the basket. She glances up and notices her grandmother's eyes are rather large today. "What big eyes you have!" Susie exclaims. "All the better to see you with, darling," grins the wolf. "Oh, here is your milk of the She stops mid-sentence. "What big ears you have also!" "All the better to hear you with, dearie," says the wolf. "And what big teeth you have too, Grandma," says Susie with a hint of concern in her voice. "All the better to eat you with," the wolf growls as he throws the blanket off and jumps up and swallows Susie whole. It all happened so quickly that Susie was barely able to let out even a scream. But that scream happened to be heard by the woodsman Paul, who lived nearby. He was working down in the holler, and the scream echoed down to him. He rushed up the hill with his axe and made his way to the cabin, where he happened made his way to the cabin. When he arrived and saw the wolf's tracks leading up to the front door, and next to that were smaller prints he recognized as Little Red's, he rammed his shoulder into the door and barges into the cabin to find the wolf in a food coma on the floor. Using his axe, he slays the wolf and cuts him open to find Little Red and her grandmother clinging together. Susie looks up and sees she is saved, and so is her grandma. She then sees Paul and becomes completely enamored. "You saved me! Oh, thank goodness you saved me!" Susie cries and hugs Paul. "Thank you so much!" In all the commotion, the noises echoed down through the woods, and they were overheard by the monk, who was out checking some of his beehives in a nearby meadow. He rushed over to investigate what was going on. When he arrived to the cabin, he finds Paul standing outside with blood on his hands and Little Red Riding Hood in his arms. "What happened here?" asked the monk. Little Red Riding Hood tells the story to the monk, for she knows he was so easy to talk to before. And after she tells her story, she smiles and says, "Isn't he dreamy?" nodding in Paul's direction. "I suppose," says the monk. "I'm moving in with him. I am already in love. He saved my life. He would never leave me." "I hope you are right." "Hey, by the way, I've been doing some research and some more reading, and I think you would benefit from a type of treatment called dialectical behavior therapy. It is appearing to be the most helpful type of therapy for people who have borderline personality disorder," explained the monk. "I already told you I'm fine!" shouts Susie as she kicks the dirt and heads towards Paul, and they begin to make their way to the cabin to truly begin their new relationship. The relationship started up in smoke after a couple of weeks of passion, followed by intense arguments and even physical altercation. Paul seemed to love her, though, and suggested she may need to try something to help her from being so volatile all the time. Being that she knew deep down inside that she did not feel right, and for fear of Paul abandoning her, she eventually gave in and got therapy. She now sits down with the monk 3 days a week and has quit drinking mead. They lived happily ever after. The end.